Hello, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Are JP Morgan the reason for the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit? Well, I got a tweet here from Ashley Prosper that's done a bit of a deep dive, which is very informative, so well done you and thank you for the information. And it really does get you thinking. It's very deep and it's very layered. And as we go through this, I'll explain how this could actually make sense. I mean, you'll start to kind of piece it together as the information's given, but I'll just add some extra little things into this, and it really does make you think. We've already seen that there's been quite apparent corruption seen from the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit, right? In terms of just the way SEC have handled themselves, some of their explanations during the trial, trying to claim that XRP is a security. The way they've played it has been very, very dirty, and some of the reasonings that they've tried to put as their arguments has been laughable, to say the least. So this really does start to make me wonder. So let's get into the tweet. I'll just read it in full, and then I can start to add my little bits into it and whatnot, and we can discuss it further from there, okay? Right, so in September of 2017, R3 Consortium, which represents around 40 of the leading banks, sued Ripple to reinstate its options contract, which Ripple had cancelled due to failures in the promotion clause. Ripple countersued in January 2018, saying that although R3 represented to Ripple that it would have access to its large consortium of leading banks, R3 knew and had reason to know that several key banks that would be instrumental to Ripple's success would soon be departing from its consortium. This refers to Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Santander, who chose not to remain in R3's consortium of almost 40 banks. Now, a few of those banks made their own agreements with Ripple, but at least one did not, in brackets as far as I can tell. JP Morgan. In June of 2018, Bill Hinman, then director of the SEC's Corporation Finance Division, gave a speech in which he gave clarity to Bitcoin and ETH, causing the price of both to skyrocket. Now we've just got some brackets. I'm sure some people were very happy that day, particularly the disguised ETH whales. Close bracket. We now have a strong reason to believe that XRP was also due to receive some clarity that day, but something had changed in the months leading up to the speech, and someone or something had decided to exclude them. Coincidentally or not, later that same year, 15 senior JP Morgan executives would find themselves in Ripple's offices. We can only assume the discussion was about XRP. Were they looking to partner with Ripple or buy them out? They had at this time been working with ETHLab on Quorum for some years and subsequently announced JPM Coin in February 2019, so I assume the latter. Brackets, this was around the same time Ripple and R3 settled for 1.04 billion XRP. It clearly wasn't going well for JP Morgan. They sold the product they had worked on for the last 5 years, Quorum, to Consensus in August 2020, whilst allegedly illegally acquiring 10% of Ethereum's core infrastructure, MetaMask and Infura, in a shady backdoor deal with Joseph Lubin, known as, quote, Project North Star, unquote. And then in brackets, this is in court now. Things for Ripple, however, were going much better. They inked a deal with MoneyGram in June 2019, and many others thereafter. However, it appears that JP Morgan wasn't done with Ripple, and had what appears to be a large number of communications with the SEC about Ripple and XRP. 4 months after Quorum was sold to Consensus, the lawsuit of the century was dropped on Ripple by the SEC. The search for the truth will continue. Wow. So, very interesting, right? And the reason why I say this really does start to make sense when you think about it is we already know about the whole Ethereum thing, right? We've all seen ETHgate, which has basically been numerous pieces of evidence to say that Bill Hinman was working for the law firm that were representing Ethereum, and he joined into the SEC, was obviously working for the SEC. Also, then actually, there's proof that he was asking for advice on if he can meet with people from Ethereum, and he was told that he couldn't because it's a conflict of interest, but still continued on with the meetings anyway. He obviously did the famous speech now that led Bitcoin and Ethereum to rally because they were essentially given legal clarity at that time. And we know now, looking at this, that obviously JP Morgan were working with Ethereum for their JPM coin. Now, we're also aware of these emails. And if I remember rightly, I think there was somebody who was a member of the XRP community who'd put in like a request for these emails to see what was being said. And if I remember rightly, SEC are basically saying that they've got to go through which ones are privileged and which ones are not. So they're basically saying which are the ones that we can kind of hold back from showing you, and which are the ones that we're going to have to ultimately show you if you press us enough. Because please believe they're not just going to hand them over willingly. It is going to be a very uphill battle trying to actually get those documents out. We saw how hard it was to get the emails and stuff that Ripple actually won in their lawsuit. Like, SEC kept fighting and trying to make more arguments as to why they shouldn't have to hand over the emails. So we know that they're going to be exactly the same, especially with someone who's just a general member of the public and not someone who's in any kind of legal battle with them or in any kind of stature. They're not just going to hand them over, please believe that. But yes, if these emails are with regards to JP Morgan and SEC, and they're clearly trying to withhold that information, again, doesn't that start to make you think? Right? Like, maybe they knew how good XRP is and they were threatened by it, And so what was the thing that would stifle their creativity and their opportunity? The lawsuit, which is evident, because this is what you've got to understand. First and foremost, if they win this lawsuit, the SEC, then they've pretty much just destroyed one of the biggest economies for Ripple to work in. It will also mean that the Ripple will ultimately leave America to do business elsewhere, set up its headquarters. It would then obviously leave the door open for a different coin, i.e. Ethereum. I mean, doesn't this all start to make sense? You've got JP Morgan, who was working with Ethereum. They'd been working on a project. You've then got the fact that Bill Hinman was working for a law firm that represented Ethereum, who did a speech, and the only other crypto that he mentioned was Ethereum, other than Bitcoin. It starts to paint a picture, right? And the problem is, even though they have done this to Ripple, Ethereum is just not going to work for this. I'm not saying it like it's a bad cryptocurrency, but in terms of payments, it's too expensive. It's just that simple. The gas fees alone are just too expensive to make it a viable option. And this is where XRP shines. And so it doesn't matter whether this was designed to hold Ripple back and XRP. It really doesn't, because Ethereum just wasn't going to be able to compare in this field. Ethereum's real superpower is the smart contracts. that's where Ethereum shines. It's not really payments. So it doesn't matter anyway, but I can understand in this space, they may have still wanted that opportunity, and maybe it's kind of a thing of, well, if XRP is not in the picture, you got to deal with the next best thing. Not saying that Ethereum is still the next best thing even in that situation, but one thing I will say is, at the moment, taking out Bitcoin, Ethereum's the only other coin that seems to have somewhat of a legal status. Obviously it's not official, and I know Gary Gensler seems to be changing his mind now on what he would deem Ethereum to be, so that could change in due time, but as of right now, they're safe. So it really does make you wonder. I'm really not like someone who just jumps onto mad conspiracy theories or anything like that. I really do feel like there has to be evidence, but I'll be honest, like, I've seen enough things from the lawsuit and just this information that's been put out here. I've seen enough to say that this has validity to it. I wouldn't really just look at this and say, it's not like people just pulling things out of the air. I mean, if you read everything in that tweet, you can see everything that's going on. And then if you go to the court case and, get yourself up to speed on the court case and everything that's happened from that situation, it's very telling. And so I'm not saying that this is definitely true, but I'm saying it would make sense. It would. And as I've said numerous times before, I do believe the reason why Gary Gensler is attacking crypto so much is because he's trying to protect the legacy financial system. Gary Gensler worked for Goldman Sachs for 18 years. So he's an old school guy. He's been a worker of the legacy financial system. And I think he's trying to put it in their hands. I think he's doing all of these lawsuits, the lack of legal clarity. I think it's all to protect the legacy financial system and put it in their hands. So to me, there's enough pieces here of the puzzle to paint the picture. I'm not saying that's definitely true, but it's very telling, and I think it does actually make sense. So what do you guys think? Do you think it really was JP Morgan who was behind the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit? Let me know your thoughts, guys. I'd be interested to hear. Thank you very much for watching this. If you did like it, please remember to drop a comment, like, and subscribe. But until next time, take care.